Good afternoon, Dr. Dunlap. After analyzing their sweet music, I'm going to be very honest with you. First, just at the looks and at the piece at the beginning and looking at the whole thing without even doing a score analysis, I was just like, what is this thing? Like, what is happening? We have these tenor and basses, one sharp, and then we have four flats in the sopranos and altos. Not to mention, from jump start, you see these which could seem like tricky rhythms. And then on top of that, you also see where we have these triplets happening. We have these piano, triple pianos going on, the molto, diminuendo. There's just a lot going on. And as you can see, that Elgar does that from the jump. Also seems to be a very slow piece. So I'll just go ahead and get started. On page 1, I'm just gonna be very frank. At the beginning, it seems, quite frankly fair. You're looking at the tenor bass part, you're like, okay, this doesn't seem to be too bad. The only thing I could clearly see that would cause some difficulty is measure 6 and 7, those rhythms and accidentals, and those tied notes into the next, from one measure to the other. That was pretty much it. I mean, going into the time change from being 4/4 to 2/4 on the first page. On the second page, page 12, once again, I had this effect going on, like, what is happening, what is going on? And I tried to do this where I analyzed it before listening to the music, just kind of to really hone in to see if I can sing a few pitches on my own without having to hear the pitches, if that makes sense. So that was something that I did this time that I hadn't done before, just kind of trying to challenge myself. But on page 12 here, we start off at 5/4, and then we, for the first two measures, then measure 3, we're still in the 5/4. I'm sorry, measure 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, we're in 5/4. And then measure 17, we're going into 10/4 time. So I know that's a huge conducting change in front of the ensemble, but not to mention, we're still having these tied, connected rhythms. Very tricky, but on top of that, it's going to be even trickier because we're in 5/4, then moving into 10/4, and it's just not very straightforward. Measure 15, you can see that we have the double piano. Once again, we have those accidentals happening again in the tenor and the bass. We also have the accidentals happening in the soprano and alto, and that gentlier lies the entire music that gently are on the spirit lies, that whole section right there. Like I said, conducting change at measure 17, going into the 10/4. Here on this page, on page 18, even the wording I was like, what is happening at the cantabile? The 5/4 going into the 4/4 from 18 to 19. Once again, we have the accidentals, but it seems like we're adding in another tenor line at the cantabile, the crescendo, decrescendo. We're also, what seems to be the basses also have a divisi as well. Then as you look at measure 20, we see these double flats happening in the alto and the soprano. I can only imagine that would be really tough to teach, especially if we're talking about unexperienced, which I don't expect to do it with an unexperienced group, but even at a smaller collegiate level where the music might not even be this hard, I mean, that would probably be crazy. Once again, we have that tricky rhythms. We're seeing double dotted quarter notes, measure 21 at Bliss. Man, I just think it's crazy of what's happening. And once again, we have a few accidentals at measure 21. Going into 22, 23, 24, tricky rhythms. On top of, we have more divisi happening in the soprano, specifically in alto and tenor and bass. Once again, we're seeing some of these things that are flat going to natural, so a lot of accidentals still happening here. Shaping, I could imagine, would be very odd. I want to say on the whole page, the shaping and framing of the piece would be very odd. As far as teaching wise, and as far as phrasing too, I think that would be kind of difficult. Once again, but referencing, you know, not speaking to the musician that probably would be more experienced, but speaking to the musician that would, you know, you're putting this in front of an ensemble for the first time. And also considering their experience at that level of in whatever ensemble they're in. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Here we go. Measure 25 seems to be very straightforward, but we're seeing a double quarter note at the top, starting the soprano and the alto. We have the divisi and the tenor. Seems like we, for the most part, we're unison in the bass, so that seems, you know, 25 seems straightforward. We have more divisi, alto, and soprano going into 26. I think the trouble spots for this page specifically would be 28 through 30. Once again, we have accidentals. We also have some of these tied notes tied into the next measure. And like I said, it's probably the divisi and also the time signature change at 30. And once again, we have, going back to the beginning, we have these two different key signatures going on throughout the entire piece. And that, I'm sure, would be very hard and odd to explain. Okay, and then measure 35, we have these triplets. Also, again, tied notes, accidentals, divisi for the soprano and alto, measure 36, 37, and 38. Still kind of divisi in 39, but 39 through 41 seems to be very straightforward. And as well as 42 to the end, just be mindful of the ritardando and the diminuendo that's taking place in the triple and quadruple piano at the end. But for the most part, I would say 35 would have the trickiest thing going on, because you have those triplets tied. Once again, like I said, the accidentals. The rhythm in 37, that dotted quarter note, and those 8 notes that are tied. And then on the bottom, you have that alto. You have that probably your alto 2 that's doing the E flat, F, down to D flat. Maybe a little tricky as well. Overall, I think the most important thing to do if you're going to teach this piece, it would have to be in chunk work. Moreover, probably in sectional. I wouldn't imagine putting this in front of an ensemble and talking about sing. Just because a lot of things are happening, and most importantly, a lot of things that, you know, you probably control as the director of choral activities, high school or college. This isn't something I find that you'll be able to control just handing it to the ensemble on day one, or even in the first or second rehearsal. I mean, let's just be realistic on what's happening and what Edgar is asking of the ensemble. And I mean, like I said, rhythm, accidental, and sectional. And even those sectionals would have to be spot on, because it's so much happening. As well as for the conductor, I would say probably conducting patterns, transitioning from one conducting pattern to the other would be very beneficial. Like making sure different parts are moving while you're still trying to hold over some parts that are having those those tied notes to different measures. That would just kind of be my analysis of it. Personally, I wouldn't perform it. Especially, I guess, where I'm still very early in my career, and looking at this, I'm like, you know, some people may see it as this is like, oh, great challenge, like, let's go for it. Maybe yourself, you know, you may be interested in doing something like this with your experience, but I'm going to be honest right now, this is not in my grasp, and it's not something that preferably inspires me. So thank you once again. I've enjoyed the course, and have a blessed one.